about that. Like, you don't think about that when I'm teaching you actuarial risk management. Although you might think about it, because I sometimes go on tangents, but it's not something that you necessarily think is something you'll do. And like, does that excite you? That ability to well, now see that there's a much wider range of things that you can do as an actuary, outside of just pricing, reserving, and evaluating. Albeit that those are the core. But is that something that excites you?
Yes, it's very exciting for me. I really didn't think, for the past 3 years at least, I thought actuarial science is just numbers, the spreadsheets. But now it's making a difference, it's making an impact, whether it be in a big company, be in the country or small communities. And I think that's really, really amazing. Just the impact that the actuaries make.
It is. And I think sometimes it's behind the scenes, right? It's not like if they buy a product that you've designed, they're thinking of you. You know, but that's not the point. The point is that they actually helped at the end, you know? And I think products, when they're designed with specific needs in mind, like I keep telling you in class, is that's the best type of financial product, where it actually meets a tangible, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be tangible, but it meets a very prominent need in someone's life. And that's where the magic of financial products comes in, I think, when you actually see the person and you seek to meet their needs, which I'm hoping in a couple of years I can be like, we had this conversation and now she's talking about these cool things. You're going to be like my star student. But we've touched on like a couple of things, but are there any other ways that you are discovering that actuaries can improve the world, or really add to society where you didn't think that they could? You said that you've gone to a couple of networking events. Like, how are you broadening your kind of view of actuaries and what they can do?
So I'm realizing actuaries don't just work in an insurance space, right? Their products can be designed to consider other factors like climate change, health, and all those different things. So I didn't really think much about that before. I used to just think actuarial science, insurance, protection against financial losses. But I didn't really think they could be, policies could be designed to consider other factors, you know, that are not necessarily just insuring assets and stuff. So, and it's been very interesting to me.
And I think that will only be something that you're exposed to more as you start sort of choosing which of the F100s you want to do, and etc. So I'm hoping that that's like a very encouraging and an eye-opening space for you, because I know when I was in your shoes, it was the first time I was like, oh, this is cool. And I was like, okay, I could dabble in this. I could dabble. So I think it's really, I'm excited to see you go through what I went through, because I think it almost felt like a breath of fresh air. For the first time, I was like, okay, I've mastered the numbers, but now the numbers tell a story. And I think we're all captivated by stories, right? And I think when those stories are specific to our backgrounds and the people that we love, those stories become very, very prominent. And then we can do some of the best work of our entire lives, because I always say this, you got your heart and your head in it. And when we have both, that work is unbelievable. Like, head work, great, but head and heart work, next level. So I'm excited to see what your head and heart combination do. As we kind of draw towards the end of our chat, what are some of the things you wish you had known when you started this journey, or some form of encouragement that you would give to your younger self? I know obviously you've said a lot of it you kind of stay to yourself and you kind of just like push through. So maybe you want to speak to actually drawing on your community and your support systems a bit more. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. You tell me. No, that's not the point of the podcast. I'm just saying the things I have heard from what you said. Like, what are some of the things you would tell yourself? Because I'm thinking, you know, this podcast is going to be listened to by first years, by people who are behind you from a studying perspective. And it might be really helpful for them to hear some of the insights that you've gained through going through this journey.
To my high school self, say, you don't have to have it figured out. Go. Because honestly, especially when I was doing grade 11 and grade 12, I didn't know what I wanted to study. I applied to 11 universities for different degrees. Yes.
You were serious. Yo.
I didn't know what I wanted to study though. And everyone, especially my teachers at school, they're like, but how come? Because you've got the grades, just do medicine. I know what I said.
It's a standard thing, right? It was like, go be a doctor. And I'm like, oh, I can't do injections.
But I knew what I didn't want to do. And I think that's a start. Right?
That's a really insightful thing to say. Because knowing what you don't want to do is a good way of finding out what you do want to do.
Yeah. So to myself, I'd say you don't have to have it figured out. You know, life is a journey.
Girl, ain't that the truth? You just get anxious,
yeah, and then to my first year self, I'd say don't be afraid to speak out a bit more.
Sure.
Because language can be a barrier, especially for, someone coming from the rural areas or from the village, coming to ECT, to listen to English
all the time. And also do your assignments in English, and also your tests are in English, and your announcements are in English.
So don't be afraid to speak out a bit more. Even if your English is not perfect, but the fact that you're putting your ideas out there and you're presenting your community as well, that's just what is important.
It's massive.
And also, as much as you're living your life and you want to improve your standard of living and your family and help your family, but you're also an inspiration to someone from back at home in community. Someone is looking at you and saying, oh wow, I'd like to be there one day.
So you're going to listen to your podcast and be, it's my hero.
Yeah. So, you're doing your life, but then there's also some other people that are looking, and maybe you wouldn't really notice about lives.
You never know, actually, who you're inspiring.
Yes. And you can make it through anything, just pushing through, and even if you fail, it's not really the end of the world. Failures can present new opportunities. And you can always learn something a bit more when you're interacting with other people. So don't be afraid to speak up a bit more. You always have your ideas.
Yeah. That's really insightful. I remember my sister once said to me, she's like, you must view failures as like plot twists in your story. So you fail and you're like, plot twist! It's a very positive way of putting it. But like when you get like 30% for a stats test that you worked really hard for, it's a little bit difficult to be like, plot twist. I'm feeling so depressed right now, but plot twist.
Just one more thing, and this is the thing that I think has helped me to jump at opportunities even when I was scared. I'm so scared of one day looking back in my life and saying, I wonder what would have happened if I just tried a bit more, or if I had taken that opportunity.
Sure.
So I think that has helped me to, even when I'm scared to, go to certain places or try something new, I jumped because I don't want to have those regrets.
Yeah.
And I think So
it's always like continual bravery.
Yeah.
To an extent.
Yeah.
Which is easier said than done, right?
It's easier said than done.
I always say to my students that the more scared you are, the more brave it is that you are being.
Yeah.
Because I think in order to be brave, you actually have to be scared.
Yeah.
If you aren't scared, then it's not really brave. You know what I mean? So bravery, I think, is a big part of what it takes to become an actuary, because everyone is going to be scared at some stage during the actuarial journey, and there is an element of bravery to be like, actually, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to give it a go. Sometimes it doesn't feel like the bravery pays off, but I think that's a really, really helpful thing to say. You are an inspiration, honestly. I'm so glad that you agreed to be on the podcast, because you represent a very unique background, a very unique view of actuarial science. And I think something I wanted to do in the podcast, which I said to you, is I want different voices to be on it, and to say actuaries aren't one type of person. Yes, they have a very common skill set, and a very unique skill set, but they're not one type of person. And I think you are a very unique face of actuarial science, which I was hoping to see a lot more. I'm waiting for your microinsurance product to jump out. And so I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Can I ask you a question?
Of course. I'll be a little bit on it. Okay, I wasn't expecting a question. Okay, go for it. What's the question?
What advice would you give to someone like me?
Sure.
Now I'm in my honors year and I'm realizing, oh, wow, it's not just numbers. There's real work can really impact. And I'm about to start my career. So what advice would you give to someone about to transition from uni to the working world?
Okay. So I think there's a number of things I would say. I think the first thing I would say is that it's not a sprint. So the part of it that is a sprint is finishing your board exams. Like, sprint for that with all your energy. Finish the board exams. You will never regret just finishing those. So that's like, there's an element of a sprint. But when it comes to your overall career goals, I would say that's not a sprint. And I think the part of the reason I say that is because you don't actually know what it is that you want to be yet. And I think for me, I realized when I was in your shoes that I knew that healthcare was something I wanted to work in, and health insurance, it pulled on my heartstrings, and my brain just kind of followed suit, and I was like, I need to be in this space. But I didn't get employed by a healthcare company when I just got out of varsity. I was at a consulting company and I worked in life insurance, and I remember the time I was quite frustrated because I was like, this is not getting me where I want to be. I know I want to work in healthcare. And then actually I was challenged by a friend of mine, and she said to me, she was like, well, what are the lessons you can learn right now? Right? Because yes, you might not be in the place that you want to be, but there's always lessons to be learned wherever you are in life. And that actually was like a mindset shift for me, to be like, there's always a lesson to be learned. So for example, like if I lecture badly, I don't like that, but it's like, okay, what's the lesson to be learned here? And then you take that and you improve and you add that to your skill set. And so I was only in consulting for a year, but I learned a lot of valuable skills. I then decided healthcare was still what I wanted to do. I moved over to a health insurance company. And I think having been in a consulting space, it actually really helped me in the health insurance company, because I saw things like differently. And so it helped me in that space. Also, I was just that much more grateful to be there, because I knew what it was like, similar to what you said, to do something I didn't like. And I think doing things that you don't like is great. I think people spend their whole lives trying to avoid doing things they don't like. I'm like, do things you don't like, because then when you do things you do like, you're like, yeah, this is the best. And so I think that is something that often is not said, that I wish had been said to me, that your career is numerous years, right? And so have a direction of where you want to go, but it will change and you will change. And I think once you finish your exams, you realize that the structure of your career and where you're heading is up to you. And that's quite difficult, because up until then, there's always like, okay, and now there's another exam, and now there's another exam, and I'm ordering my notes online, and I'm doing a mock exam, and I'm doing past papers. And then you finish and you realize that like it's up to you. And there's no set path. And I think so my advice to you there would be constantly check in with yourself as to what it is that you want to do. And I think a big part of that, for me at least, was saying, what is the work that I find meaningful? And for me, working in health insurance and designing products for low-income people, or people that weren't generally catered for, was very motivating. But once I had done that, and I then did a bit more introspection, and I was like, I actually really want to teach. Like, that's where my heart's at. I want to teach. And then I worked at a school. And then after the school, I was like, when I was working at the school, I was like, oh, I want to lecture something, or I want to teach something a little bit more complex. And so then I came and I'm teaching at university now. And so just constantly check in with yourself, because I think if you don't, you sometimes can stay in a role for longer than you should, just because of the security or not necessarily thinking through where you want to be in a couple of years' time. So that kind of would be my kind of bits of advice there. But the overarching one is also, don't be scared to change. And a big thing is if you don't like a job, like stay for a certain amount of time. Like you can't be changing your job